Hey guys, how's everyone doing? My first new video in a while. I've been AWOL. I haven't been feeling well. I caught a mild case of COVID. All right, so this is going to be a new feature on this channel. It's called the Weekly Reconnaissance Report. I don't have any graphics or any slides yet, but this is going to start being a weekly feature. What we're going to do is we're going to look at new ETF filings, and I'm going to make comments on new ETF filings. Now, I had planned to do this before Jay, made his big announcement yesterday. So I think yesterday's big announcements by Jay have been mentioned so much. Let's pull it up here. Here's this, the big Defiance announcement and the big YieldMax announcement. And these have been talked about so much. I wanted to cover some other new ETF announcements. But yes, these are definitely interesting. What I wanted to go over today is something else I found that I'm more excited about than what Jay announced. And it is called, there's two of them, and I'm very excited about these. Like I've already said, it's called the YieldMax Dorsey Wright Hybrid 5 Income ETF. And I was like, WTH. I mean, that Dorsey Wright, so the first thing I did was Google it. I was thinking, Dorsey Wright, is that a person's name? Is it a system, something I haven't heard of? In any event, let's just talk about what we found. We'll go with the Dorsey Wright Hybrid 5 Income ETF Fund summary first. This fund seeks to track the performance before fees and expenses of the NASDAQ Dorsey Wright Tactical Hybrid Option Income Strategy Index. So this is a company that's made an index, okay? Now that's great, but what I'm thrilled about is YieldMax is utilizing this index company to build them an index. Okay, and they're going to build an index of just YieldMax funds. Okay, and it even says down here which ones they're going to include, and they aren't going to include the inverses. Spoiler alert. But it's going to take an inverse of all the single stock YieldMax funds. No inverses, no index funds, and no YMAX, no YMAG. This company's going to take that universe, and it's going to make an index of the 5 top performing. And they have 2 different variations on the index. But from what I can tell, this is all preliminary, but it's going to make them an index of the 5 top performing YieldMax stocks. Then what they're going to do is they're going to reconstitute the index every month. And so what this ETF is going to do is it's going to let you invest in the 5 best performing YieldMax stocks every month. I bet you they do one that's best performing based on yield, and they do probably another index that's best performing based on total return, or maybe total return and yield. My guess is the one that's saying tactical hybrid is the one that's based on total return and yield. But then they have this other one, Dorsey Wright Feature 5 Income Index. I bet you that's the one that's maximized for yield. Okay. And anyway, so this would be badass enough if it was just for this. If it was just an index of these 5 funds reconstituted monthly and you could trade that would be badass enough by itself, right? But these guys have raised the stakes once again. And this is really, I discovered this after the Jay interview last night, but I'm way more excited about this. So get this. So now, in addition to what they're doing, all of that, the big catch is, all right, well, let me just go through it. There's no fees and expenses yet. This is preliminary, filing. There's no sub-advisor. It's just Venuto over at Tidal and another guy. We'll get to that in a second. But it's not Jay. It doesn't mention any Zega personnel, or it doesn't mention Zega. It's just Mike. Okay. Principal investment strategy. The fund follows a passive management, or I was trying to give you the too long don't read, but my version is what I told you. They're going to put it into the they're going to make an index of 5 funds. And then they're going to do one other thing, and that's the important thing. So just stick around. This is the part I'm really excited about. The fund follows a passive management or indexing approach to track the performance of the index before fees and expenses. The index employs NASDAQ's Dorsey Wright relative strength matrix methodology, the Dorsey Wright methodology, to select securities included in the index. The index relates exclusively to the YieldMax family of ETFs, specifically those that provide exposure either to the share price of a specific operating company or one or more exchange-traded products, collectively called the evaluated securities. The eligible YieldMax ETFs are referred to as the underlying ETFs. The Dorsey Wright methodology analyzes the underlying evaluated securities to which the underlying YieldMax ETFs provide exposure rather than the YieldMax ETFs themselves. What Dorsey Wright's looking at is the underlines. They talk about a relative strength matrix. So they're technical, and this is technical analysis, TNA. Mike, the tactical stock scalper, ought to love this, and all the people that follow him, because they're trying to incorporate that style of approach into high yield investing. So it's very novel and very interesting. I'm going to say Mike won the day yesterday. I'm going to say this is more novel than any of Jay's announcements. But anyway, all right. So think about that. So it's going to rate the YieldMax funds, but not the funds, the parents. It's going to choose the 5 best parents, right? Okay, it's going to put them in an index. Then this is the catch right here. The index initially consists of 40% of the 5 highest ranked securities identified by Dorsey Wright methodology, the underlying securities, the underlying. 60% is going to be the 5 YieldMax ETFs. So they have a 40-60 split. So when I first came on here, and people were ragging on Tesla, and I was going, just all you got to do is take Tesla dividends, take maybe half of them and buy Tesla stock. Situation solved, problem over, right? I mean, if your problem is these things just don't get any upside, okay, yeah, that's true. But the good news is they get a ton of dividends. You can use some of the dividends to buy Tesla itself. That's one of many solutions. Then also you can use part of the dividends to reinvest in these funds themselves. We've covered all that here. Anyway, so this is more the strategy of, hey, we're going to take part of the dividends and buy the stock itself. And they aren't literally taking the dividends, but they're splitting them up. So instead of they won't get the huge yield that the YieldMax stocks get. In fact, they're only going to get 40% of it. So let's figure this real quick. So let's say they take the 5 best YieldMax stocks, and the average yield on the 5 best is 35% or something. Or let's say it's 40%. Okay. Well, they're only getting 60% of that yield. So instead of 40%, they're 26. My apologies. So 26% yield, but they would get a lot of damn upside. And you wouldn't have to do my plan of taking the dividends and buying Tesla stock and building that up. You also won't already have to own Tesla stock. These YieldMax funds are perfect for somebody that already has Tesla. Then you have Tesla and you're fine. But for somebody that doesn't already have exposure to the underlying, it can create a NAV erosion problem where your investment erodes over time due to the covered call paying such a high yield and stuff. It's a good news, bad news situation, but it's something you have to consider, right? Okay, well, now this is a solution. What I like about this is it's automated because they're going to reconstitute this once a month. Now, I'm going to caution you. This is a technical system. Technical systems are based on stuff that happened in the past, and it says all this in this disclosure. So there's no guarantee that just because something had the highest relative strength last month, that it'll continue to have it this month. I mean, there's weaknesses. This in technical analysis, but what technical analysis does tend to try to capitalize on, and especially when technical analysis works the way it's supposed to, what they capitalize on is a trending element in the market. The fact that the market doesn't usually go up one day, down the next day, up the next day, down the next day, up the next day, down the next day, that the market and just nature in general tends to have trends, and they, go this way for a while and then back to this way. Technical analysis can take advantage of that phenomenon. All right. But technical analysis is no guarantee. It's just another way of looking at it. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how they do on this, but I'm beyond excited about this because this doesn't have because of the split, it's going to get plenty of NAV. So people aren't going to be able to talk about erosion on this. This shouldn't have an erosion problem. But it should also be able to get some decent yield, because 60% of like what the YieldMax stocks get is still really good, right? So here's some other stuff you guys might be interested in case I didn't explain it well enough. I have a lot of experience with technical analysis. But I kind of gave up on it years ago, or it's fine for what it does, but it's very backwards looking and it has a bunch of weaknesses to it also. It's not the be all and end all, but this is interesting. I'm going to read from the prospectus for just a little bit longer. This methodology utilizes relative strength described below to capture and record historical performance patterns. It uses these patterns to identify current momentum trends. Remember, I said that word trend for each evaluated security in comparison to others. So relative strength, you guys get it. It's relative to the rest of the market. Usually they compare it to the index. But let's just see what they say. So it's relative strength measures the security's performance in relation to other securities, benchmarks. That's what I just said, or broad market indexes. I guess that's what I just said. It is a momentum-based methodology reflecting the tendency of securities to continue moving in the same direction, upwards or downwards, over a period of time. That relies on objective, data-driven analysis. A security's relative strength can improve if it rises more than the market in uptrend and goes down less than the market in a downtrend. The Dorsey Wright methodology systematically evaluates each evaluated security's relative strength by aggregating buy signals and sell signals derived from the point and figure charts. I'm not going to get into what point and figure charts are right now. They aren't that interesting, but go Google them. A buy signal is generated when positive momentum exceeds a predefined threshold, indicating a favorable outlook over the next few weeks to several months. Conversely, a sell signal is triggered when negative momentum surpasses a similar threshold, suggesting a decline in performance over the next few weeks to a year. So and it just says they rank them and they take the top 5. And then they also take the top 5 YieldMax correspondents and they weigh them in a 40-60 balance, reconstitute it once a month. I mean, what's not to like? I love this, guys. I don't know. I don't know. Do you guys have anything to say? I'd be interested to hear what you guys think, but I love it and I don't love it. I don't love that they're changing these funds. These are no longer high yield investments. They've just switched them to growth investments that have medium yield characteristics. Jay yesterday pretty much invented a new class of ETFs or something that I'm not really all that thrilled about, but whatever. The thing about these ETFs are they can stand alone. You can get them and not get them in part of an allocation like this one particularly. You would have to get triple QI as part of an allocation to be doing it right. Okay. I'll make a longer video on that. But you can get the Dorsey Wright fund is not part of an allocation, and it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world because it has growth in it also. In fact, it has the 60-40. They've got your 60-40 right there. I didn't even think about it that way. Oh my gosh. I'm so dense. I didn't even think 60-40 as in, hey, that's the master ratio that all frickin' financial planners have used since the beginning of time. So yeah, that's all they've done is they've slapped a 60-40 on this. I mean, what's not to like? It's genius. It's genius. I'll stop rambling and I'll listen to your comments. So leave me comments. I'll try to answer them. And I have some other new videos planned today on the YieldMax, the YieldMax content and stuff. And I'm going to go into depth on what I meant on the standalone fund as well in a future video. If you guys are interested in that, keep your eye on this channel. Okay. All right, guys, take care.